Okay, welcome back to Teaching Elixir, where we try to teach my friend here, who's a developer already, more about Elixir. And we're actually getting to something that I'm terrible at using because I never bothered to learn the set of them that is available. So sigils, very occult.
Yeah.
So the overview says Elixir provides an alternative syntax for representing and working with literals. A sigil will start with a tilde, squiggly line, followed by a character. The Elixir core provides us with some built-in sigils, however. It's possible to create our own when we need to extend the language. So these are interesting. I keep seeing them, but I never remember what they are, so I never use them on my own. And the word literal, it took a while before I actually sort of internalized what that is.
Yeah. It's literal. Anything that you see.
Yeah.
Except for everything else, of course.
But in programming, like when you create a string using sort of double quotes, typically, that's usually a string literal. When you put in the number 5 as an integer, that's a literal. So yeah, I take it to sort of mean actual values.
Yeah.
But I guess it's actual values stated as actual values, so they're not dynamically built or.
Well, that depends if you
Yeah.
have a string literal with some string interpolation in it.
Yeah, maybe it's not literal anymore then. So
I think it is a literal, but stuff happens.
oh yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
sigils.
So these sigils. So here's a list of available sigils include. So all of these are, or some of these exist in both lower and uppercase. So C generates a character list, and depending on whether you use the big C or the small c, you get escaping and interpolation, or no escaping or interpolation.
Okay. So I'm reading ahead because I'm like that.
Yeah.
We have character lists and strings and word lists. I suppose they will explain what a word list is soon. But what's the difference between a character list and a string? I have a nagging feeling that I should remember this, but I don't.
Let's see. Is a character list the type of string that Erlang typically uses? I think that's the case. So
they have the
that's a list of characters. So it doesn't quite do. I don't think that does Unicode very well.
It depends what a character is.
Yeah, but Elixir strings are binaries. They are not character lists.
Okay, cool.
So an Elixir string is handled with the S, and I believe the C one generates Erlang character lists.
Okay.
A word list, that's a list of strings.
But I get serious Perl vibes.
So that's mostly a convenience thing. And then we have N and U, which generate a naive datetime struct, and then U, which generates a datetime struct that isn't naive. It's I think it defaults to. I guess it defaults to whatever you put in it, honestly.
Yeah.
And then a list of delimiters. And this one, I hadn't even registered that this was a thing. I knew that there were delimiters, but I hadn't really thought about this. So I think this means, the way I interpret it, is that you can use any of these delimiters as the delimiters for your sigil, which means that if you know that you're going to use a bunch of parentheses in your sigil, you can use pipes instead, or you can use quotes instead, or you can use less than, greater than, or curlies, or square brackets, slashes, depending on what you will be having inside the sigil. Which I guess is super convenient. It doesn't really matter that much.
I suppose the list of delimiters is only these, so
Yeah,
you can't add your own.
probably not.
I would
Okay.
so add stupid emojis.
So the char list. Let's get to it. Yeah, that's Erlang's the Erlang string thing.
Yep.
What you normally get when you single quote in Elixir.
Okay.
So we can see that for the first example is using little c, which has interpolation, which is this part
Yep.
where you can interpolate values. And the second one does not allow interpolation. And as such, it's output as a literal.
Woohoo.
Cool. Nothing more to say there. So this can be a really good way of just creating some literals. I wonder if it actually supports multi-line. I don't recall. Yeah, it does.
It does in its own way.
Yeah, I mean, it encodes it encodes the new lines into the thing, which is correct, I think. But this means that I should probably just stop using doc strings as multi-lines. Probably.
Yep.
Okay. And then we have regular expressions. So we're not going to be we're not going to be covering a lot of the regular expression stuff here, but we can cover the fact that the sigil produces regular expressions. So, and this is a fun little operator. I guess this is regex match operator. I don't think I've ever used it.
Oh, I think I saw that first in Perl and then in Ruby. Python doesn't really believe in operators, or any exotic operators.
Oh, come on. They had a complete war over the walrus operator.
Yeah, because they didn't believe in exotic operators. Otherwise, it just would have happened. Let's see what happens if I... Yes! Okay, I'm happy now. I just made the regular expression case insensitive.
I'm also super happy that we can now see that you are anonymous and where you are in the document.
Yeah, I'm totally anonymous. I'm a hacker.
But it's nice.
Yes.
I updated Livebook. so now we have indicators.
Can I give myself a name?
I was wondering about that too.
Okay. We need to make a
separate video where we just experiment with Livebook.
Yeah, that too. Okay. Regular expressions are cool.
So this allows us to match on some strings and say, oh, this is true. Okay.
Oh. And then they say, we can add an I to the end, and then it's case insensitive. I promise.
Who would do
didn't
that?
read this before I did that.
No, because that's just typically how regular expressions do.
Yes.
Further, Elixir provides the regex API, which is built on top of Erlang's regular expression library. Let's use a regex split with a regex sigil.
Good stuff.
Boop. Oh, I did not remove that from the... So, there. Still works.
Small amount of cheating.
Yeah, we just return the value we want returned, and that actually works.
Yes.
So now we're down at strings.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, so this very dense little regex sigil here is essentially just a new line, if it matches a new line. Yeah. But then...
it matches an underscore, right?
Underscore. It's too early in the morning sometimes.
They are commonly mistaken for each other.
It's
strings.
Word soup. Okay. Strings. It can generate strings. It's not very special, seemingly. But this is excellent for the case where... No, this was a cheat again.
Yeah.
There we go. No difference. But this would be ideal for when you need to do this stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, yeah, thank you. You escaped it. Perfect.
And because I just forgot the name of them. Quotation marks
Hmm.
of the different kind. They mean different things in Elixir. You
Yeah,
said earlier,
very
right?
different things.
Yeah.
So you can't just use single quotes when you want double quotes in your string,
Exactly.
because then you get an Erlang char list, and most things that operate on Elixir strings do
Yeah.
not work with an Erlang char list.
So it's not in Python, like in Python or any of the other scripting languages.
Yeah, there's a lot of scripting languages where the only meaning of single quotes is essentially we don't, like in PHP, that means we don't interpolate variables, and
Exactly.
you only have to escape single quotes.
Yep.
While in other languages, it's just like, yeah, in this case, you have to escape the single quotes or the double quotes. Pick one.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the difference? The difference is similar to the character list sigil we looked at. So this is just exemplifying the interpolation thing. So you
Good
can
stuff.
use string down case on the word school here, for example.
Yep.
While down there, you can simply outputs your little piece of code. Now, the word list. So I don't think this is not a specific type or anything. It just produces lists of strings.
Yeah.
Where this gets to be quite useful is sort of for configuration and things where you we just need to produce a list of strings. So you can't produce a list of strings with spaces in them because of how this works. But maybe you can you escape? Let's see, this one should allow escaping. No, you cannot escape the space. It trims. Yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah. Is this done at compile time?
Don't actually know. You mean if the interpolation would be done at compile time?
Yeah.
That would depend on where it's defined. So if you define this as a module attribute, which is sort of the constant-ish thing in modules, then it would be compile time, because that's evaluated at compile time.
Okay.
But I think the sigil would be evaluated whenever it's evaluated.
Oh, okay. I thought all sigils were evaluated at compile time.
So I would imagine that the sigils are evaluated insofar as turned into whatever they actually are.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're not very advanced. They can't do a lot of weird stuff. Even the regex ones, I mean, that only produces a regex. I guess it's a struct or something.
Yeah.
And you can produce those by just defining it instead.
Okay.
So, yeah. And then we have some naive date times. So
yeah, I have a beef with them, a serious beef.
With the naive date times?
Yeah. I want time zones on everything.
Yeah.
Preferably the correct time zones, but I'm cool with UTC too.
For some time, I don't think the Elixir standard library had any serious date time handling stuff in it.
Okay.
So you were using a library called timex typically.
Yeah.
And I think it had the naive datetime struct early on. I don't remember because I wasn't using it heavily at the time, but I know there was a lot of movement around datetime and the need for... So timex is still super useful if you're doing a lot of stuff with time and dates, but you can get through with just a standard library for a lot of things these days.
Nice.
So that's where the datetime sigil comes in, where you actually have a time zone attached.
Nice.
Yeah, and then you can create your own sigils.
Because why not?
compile error.
Yeah. Livebook doesn't like making your own sigils.
I wonder.
Or
When you depend on a module in the same context in which it is defined. Okay, yeah. So we can't do it quite that way, I think.
do you need more modules?
I think we do. So let's do my module. Import the sigils. And just go boop. Oh,
Excellent. It works.
it outputted it along with the modules. That's a little bit weird. Let's do which school do can I call it from here at least?
I hope so.
I think I had my keyboard in the wrong language. Common problem.
Yeah.
So there.
Very
so now
good.
we have an upcase module or upcase
Yeah.
sigil. Sure. Yeah, which is it's good that this is available. People use it for some different things. I know. So LiveView provides one, maybe it's two sigils, one for so the slightly older LiveEX and for the newer sort of HTML3 aware templating that's been added. And I know the Surface library that builds on top of Livebook also provides it a fair number of sigils or a few sigils, which allows them to like, okay, this is a string, and when it's we want to mangle it after the user inputs it essentially.
Okay.
So yeah, the EEX templating definitely has some sigil stuff going on, which allows them to do a bunch of clever stuff to make it more convenient to use. So that's sigils, a different way of producing values, I guess.
Yep.
Mostly a convenient way of briefly stating sort of date times and especially strings. It's very commonly used for creating strings, and I really should get into the habit of using it because it's better than what I've typically been doing, but I never really went through it when I learned the language because it didn't seem like a very important part of the language, and it's not particularly compared to sort of getting comfortable with the enum module or learning about lists and maps. Like this is very unimportant, but it's still very useful, and I'm glad they exist because this should make some of the stuff I'm doing nicer.
Yeah, makes you write more idiomatic Elixir code.
Yeah, probably. I don't know if people have strong opinions about sigils. Haven't heard any real discussion on the topic. All right, but that's it for now.
Yep.
Thanks for watching.